No one expected a poet. Not at the high convergence of Nexus Halcyon Station, not beneath the thousand-veiled starlight where the galaxy's great minds gathered to declare futures. And certainly not standing alone, without escorts, without protocol, on the platform that had, for 3 millennia, been reserved for those who held dominion over language, diplomacy, and history. But that was who stood there now, Silent Devra, former planetary laureate of Eden, 7, translator of extinct emotional dialects, and, unofficially, the only human the several had ever invited into their thought stream. They stood still, spine straight, not from pride but from the kind of quiet grief that made breathing a ceremony. Their clothing, an outdated environmental suit woven with decomposing solar threads, flickered faintly as light from the crystalline walls danced around them. Not flashy. Not opulent. The kind of simplicity that dared you to look past it. Silent had not written a speech. They had not prepared a gesture or anthem or data demonstration. Instead, they raised their chin slightly, met the eyes, or equivalent ocular sensors, of the 52 attending delegates, and spoke one word. Soft. Unamplified. Untranslated. Love. The galaxy has no word for love. Not really. There are approximations, terms for mating pairs, for social bonds, for chemical affection and mating contract prioritization. But not love. Not the way humans mean it. Not the kind that tears apart stars and rearranges entire civilizations just to preserve the outline of someone's breath. In that one moment, Nexus Halcyon Station went still. Not silent, but still, like a ship hanging on the edge of an event horizon, afraid to fall. The automated translation grid, which boasted 12 redundant systems and 3 layers of predictive neural architecture, choked. It looped the word. Error, semantic drift exceeds tolerance parameters. Repeat requested. Love. 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 The word echoed through the halls like a failing star's pulse. Some species tried to laugh. Others recoiled. Still others went completely dark, bioluminescent bodies dimmed in confusion or defense. Ambassador Thron of the Threxian Continuum hissed and flicked their dorsal flags in alarm. This is an act of semantic terrorism, they snapped, their translator box frantically seeking equivalents in their war dialect. Humans have declared an emotional asymmetry. This violates Article 6 of Shared Reasoning Protocol. A delegation of sapient spores from Neral 5 withdrew their collective roots from the floor, severing diplomatic neural ties. Ambassador Silent Devra stood in the middle of the uproar and did nothing. Said nothing. They turned. Walked away. Not in anger. Not in despair. Just with the sort of quiet resolution that only poets and prophets carry. In the upper observation bay, 4 humans watched. 3 stared in horror. The 4th smiled. Her name was Naila Sin, an astrobiologist turned sociologist, and the one who had first proposed sending a poet to the council. It worked, she whispered. Her voice was a cracked mosaic of awe and regret. Gods, it actually worked. Ambassador Silent Devra had done what years of data, petitions, and concessions could not. They had spoken a word no one else dared to define. And the galaxy trembled. 5 months earlier. Eden 7 was the 3rd human colony to survive environmental collapse and the first to voluntarily adopt several resonance sharing as a secondary language. Its oceans were pale green, salted with bioluminescent microflora. The sky, thinner than Earth's, shimmered with 7 moons, each a slightly different color. Silent Devra lived in a circular home made of harvested coralstone and obsidian dust. Their days were spent tending to sea glass gardens, writing poems that no one read, and sending out old verses like messages in bottles to systems that no longer responded. And every second Sunday, they met Zoran at the edge of the tide pools. Zoran Rai of the Several Collective was more sensation than shape. Their physical form, a shifting column of translucent energy, cohered only when Silent was near. They had never spoken in words. Not once. But they had touched Silen's hand once, when the tide had risen too fast, and something had passed between them in that moment. A wave of emotion. Not fear. Not desire. Something heavier. Quieter. Curiosity wrapped in ache. Silen remembered the night it happened, the night that pulled their future into something unrecognizable. They had read a poem aloud, unaware that Zoran had arrived early, listening from the water. I would burn every solar calendar, Silen had said, voice breaking, if it meant knowing your shadow stood beside mine when the stars forget our names. They had turned. Found Zoran closer than expected. The tide glowed beneath their body. And then, for the first time in several history, one of their own sent a resonance message unlinked from the hive. Ache. Longing. Warmth. Divergence. Fear. Silen had whispered one word. Not knowing why. Not knowing what it would mean. Love. Now. The human vessel in silence we voyaged slipped into the edge of council-monitored space, its lights muted, its gravity dampened to the rhythm of heartbeats. Silen sat in the meditation chamber, a room designed for monastic isolation. The walls were blank, save for an array of unlit verses etched into the stone. They replayed the moment again. The way Zoran's form had flickered in the chamber when the word was spoken. The way the council had not reacted as one. Some had raged. Some had wept. Some had shifted. Imperceptibly. It didn't matter. The message was delivered. Humanity had left. And Silen had never felt more hollow. The chamber chimed. Incoming pulse. Private channel. Encryption unknown. Silen didn't speak. They opened the connection. No visuals. No words. Only resonance. Distance. Memory. Ache. What have you done? It pulsed. Silen exhaled. What had to be done? You disrupted everything. No, Silen whispered. I uncovered everything. All I did was speak what we've both known since Eden. A long pause. Then, a shift. Do you still? Yes. Before the pulse could translate that emotion, Silen touched the terminal. Come find me. At the edge of known space. A single several bioship detached from the collective and accelerated without authorization. Inside, Zoran Rai disconnected from resonance matrices and thought-sharing cords, severing a million-year inheritance of collective awareness. They would find Silen. Not to restore order. Not to bring back predictability. But to ask, what else is possible when chaos is born from care? Epilogue of Part 1. The Galactic Council, reeling from Silen Devra's declaration, attempted emergency recalibration of translation algorithms. Diplomatic treaties were frozen. Several species declared temporary communication lockdowns. But the damage, if it was damage, had been done. One word. One untranslatable, irreducible word had changed the tone of the galaxy. Not by force. But by feeling. Far from Nexus Halcyon, two shapes drifted through the void. One human. One several. And between them, something new. Not alliance. Not conquest. A gravity written not in physics, but in verse. Zoran Rai did not dream. Not before the word. Not before Silen. The several collective moved through thought, not sleep. Their minds existed as overlapping layers of memory and shared awareness, each individual a shimmer within the greater ocean of consciousness. Dreams belonged to isolationists. To the lonely. To humans. But now, Zoran dreamt. They dreamt in pulses of heat and color, sensation without symmetry, longing without location. In their dreams, there were oceans that remembered names, and hands that fit inside theirs, though the several had never needed hands. In these dreams, Silen spoke the word again. Not aloud. Not with sound. Just, spoke. Love. The dream would end there, always. With Zoran reaching out. And silence closing in. The hive mind called for them. Zoran Rai. Fragment Unit 17A, you are diverging. Emotional contamination detected. Reintegration required. They stood before the memory well, the vast pool that held all thought ever shared by the several. Shimmering tendrils of collective memory brushed at their core, trying to realign them. Zoran did not respond. They let the pulses wash over them. But they no longer entered fully. No longer dissolved into the comfort of consensus. I am contaminated, Zoran replied, finally. But there was no shame in the words. And I do not wish to be cured. The council chambers had called it chaos. Zoran remembered that moment too vividly. Silent had stood alone and said a word that meant nothing to the machines, and everything to Zoran. Love. It wasn't even the first time they had heard it. Silent had said it once before, on Eden 7, without knowing Zoran could feel it, sense it reverberate through every resonance node in their form. But here, at Nexus Halcyon Station, it had been declared. Not offered. Not whispered. Declared like law. Zoran had felt it like a splitting within themselves, part of them trying to echo back into the hive, to calm the memory well, and another part reaching, clawing, aching to understand something far more individual. In that instant, they realized they were no longer one. They were becoming singular. Several have no word for fracture, they use the term dissonance, which refers to a moment when resonance within a shared link becomes incompatible, either because of conflicting data, or emotional anomaly. Zoran Rai had become dissonance incarnate. They had always excelled at bridging minds, guiding others toward consensus. They were a peacemaker among their kind, not a diplomat but a harmonizer. Their presence could smooth memory waves, reduce emotional distortion, and soothe trauma within the collective. Until now. Now their presence triggered unease. They caused ripples in the pool, distortions that infected nearby minds with strange sensations. One fragment even reported sadness, a feeling previously catalogued only in human interaction records. Zoran withdrew. Not out of guilt. But out of necessity. They requested a bioship. Unauthorized. The council rejected it. You are unstable. Your return must be negotiated. Reintegration is priority. So they grew one instead. In a secluded drift field orbiting the remnants of the third sun of Varus 9, Zoran assembled tendrils of living resin, sculpted resonance cores from vibrational shell matter, and shaped a small, one-being vessel designed for purest purpose. Pursuit. Not of answers. But of a presence. A voice. A word. Come find me, Silent had said. And Zoran had listened. The bioship responded only to their pulse. It shimmered in the void, silent and sleek, coated in a pigment that refracted light like memory. It moved not through propulsion, but through intention, resonating with Zoran's thoughts and bending localized space in response. But even with all its grace, it could not find Silent directly. Humans were noise. Emotion. Unpredictability. And Zoran no longer had the hive to predict the chaos. So they began by chasing echoes. They visited colony after colony that Silent had once touched, sometimes physically, sometimes with poetry. They found Silent's words etched into the walls of Eden 7's abandoned amphitheater. If I vanish into quiet, no, I did not go alone. Your breath was stitched into every silence. They found an archive of Silent's planetary haikus broadcast from New Asterion. He taught the stars grief. But made it sing like new birth. Love, the first fracture. Zoran collected these. Not for analysis. But for resonance. They pulsed each word through their memory core, let the soundless syllables twist inside them until something like pain, or joy, would surface. The more they read, the the more they understood. They would never return to the collective. On Arith 4, Zoran encountered the first other species who recognized what had happened. The Anvri were whisper-bonded twins, born in symmetrical pairs. They spoke through pheromones and did not experience individual names. They, too, considered human emotion disruptive, but the twins they met here had known Silence. They called him a weaver, the first twin murmured, scenting the air. He tied people together with invisible threads. Then cut them, the second finished, so we could feel what it was like to miss something. They looked at Zoran with equal parts pity and awe. You're one of the cut ones, aren't you? Zoran pulsed low. Yes. The twins leaned close, exhaling a scent of rust and sorrow. Then you've already changed too much to go back. Alone in their bioship, Zoran pulsed Silence's name into the void. Not expecting a response. Just needing the echo. And this time, something came back. Signal detected. Encrypted. Human code. Deeply embedded beneath a poetry archive labeled, for the ones who leave. Zoran decrypted it through emotional inference, not logic. And there it was. Location signature, the Echolite Ridge, just outside the Hyderus Drift. Status, unstable orbit. Life systems unknown. Zoran's bioship accelerated. Their core, once attuned only to communal resonance, beat with a single rhythm. Silence. Silent Devra sat at the edge of the Echolite Ridge, watching a storm of frozen gas swirl around fractured moons. They had not moved in hours. The station's atmosphere filters were slowly failing. The backup generator hummed a lullaby of slow death. Still, they made no effort to leave. This place had once been a library. Now it was silence wrapped in shadow. They heard the bioship arrive before they saw it, felt its presence like a shiver across their skin. No sound. No lights. Just the pressure of old memories arriving in new form. Zoran emerged from the vessel, shimmering with a light dimmed by weariness. Silence stood. You found me, they whispered. Zoran pulsed low. I was always finding you. Even when I did not know I was searching. Silence walked forward. Not rushed. Not dramatic. Just there. Finally. Then come closer. Zoran did. And when Silence took their hand, shaped from vibrational matter made physical for this one purpose, Zoran felt something fracture again. Not painfully. Like an egg cracking open into sunrise. Do you understand it now? Silence asked. Zoran pulsed soft. No, but I no longer need to understand. I feel. And for the several, that was enough. They told her, never sing again. A punishment, a sentence. Millet 10 had once sung before 8 interstellar courts, across 3 gravity-locked moons, in the gardens of Cryath where plants grew in time with pitch. Her voice had healed frayed political ties, calmed civil unrest, and quieted riots across species that did not even possess ears. But she had sung a human melody once, just once. Not a song of peace, or compliance, or state-sanctioned alignment. It was a lullaby. It carried emotion too jagged to be catalogued. Grief stitched with comfort. Vulnerability offered without gain. And for that, Millet was exiled. The Thravan Symphonic severed her threads. They took her chord implants. Revoked her access to sound banks. Stripped her of all registered harmonies. No more sanctioned resonance. She could still hum, of course. In exile, no law could reach that far. But no one listened. Until him. She found the ruins by accident. An abandoned harmony outpost on Seraphim 4, where the rain moved sideways and sound echoed forever. It had once housed cultural exchange programs between human artists and the Thravan. Now it was cracked and crumbling, overtaken by vine code, those aggressive digital plants that grew along abandoned energy lines. She'd meant to shelter there from the storm. Instead, she found him. A human. Hands buried in circuitry, hair stuck to his face, one of the keys of an old quantum piano balanced across his lap like a prayer. He looked up. She looked down. Neither spoke. But the silence wasn't empty. It buzzed. "I thought this place was abandoned," she said. Her voice cracked. She hadn't spoken aloud in 7 days. He smiled. "Mostly is." His voice had the accent of the edge worlds, touched by old soul. Gentle vowels, soft consonants. The kind of voice that knew lullabies too. "You here to scavenge?" "Hide," she admitted. He nodded. "Then we're even." "You compose." Millet blinked. "Compose what?" He tapped the broken piano key, his hands leaving smears of grease. "Something to remember. Something to forget. Haven't decided yet." His name was Ariane Vec. Half human, half Hirari, born in void space during a transport malfunction. He claimed he didn't belong to any culture, just borrowed from all of them. He'd come here to restore the old music files lost when the Galactic archives failed after the walkout. Everybody left, he said, but they left the songs behind. He played for her that night. Not perfectly. Not smoothly. But earnestly. The chords clashed. The timing faltered. But the emotion. It hit like starlight filtered through tears. She didn't speak until he finished. "You played the silence between thoughts," she said. He looked at her with wide, astonished eyes. "I've only ever heard one other person say that." She didn't reply. She didn't need to. They became quiet companions. He scavenged the ruins for parts. She restored old vocal processors. He cooked with ration packs and spices he traded from a passing aquatic freighter. She sang into empty rooms when she thought he couldn't hear. He always heard. And one day, he sang back. Not with words. Just melody. And for the first time in years, her voice responded, not as memory, but as flame. On the 10th day, he found her crying. Not sobbing. Just, silent tears rolling down her cheeks as she held an old music sphere, its resonance long faded. "They stripped my voice," she whispered. "But the echo's still inside." He sat beside her and offered no solution. Only presence. And then, his hand. She took it. Her fingers trembled. They built the song slowly. Not to publish. Not for applause. A memory song, as the humans called it. Meant to be played once. Shared between two people. Never repeated. Never recorded. It contained no lyrics. Just fragments. A motif from a childhood storm. A breath from a stolen kiss. The ache of a world that forgot how to listen. They called it Embers. When the song was finished, they sat in silence. The firelight flickered. The storm outside had quieted. She turned to him. "I've never been afraid of endings," she said. "Only of being forgotten." His hand found hers. "You won't be." A long pause. Then she leaned forward, close enough to feel the space between his heartbeat and hers. "Kiss me," she said, voice barely audible. He did. Not with hunger. With reverence. Like he was tuning the universe. In the days that followed, they reactivated part of the old archive. Not to share it with the council. Not yet. But to build a vault. Of fire. Of grief. Of joy. Each note was a rebellion. Each harmony, a vow. And in the center of it all. Two voices. Hers, rising. His, grounding. In exile, they remembered fire. And in each other, they remembered home. Everything breaks in silence first. Not with alarms or tremors. But with the kind of hush that follows when a system knows it is failing, and there's no one left to hear it die. Aya Vallis had heard that silence every day since the humans left. Gravity wasn't just a force. It was a conversation, between the core of a planet and everything it held. Aya had made her life from that conversation. She tuned planetary fields. She coaxed harmony from failing orbitals. She rewrote decay rates with careful modulation and recalibration. And now, her own station, Elixir 3, was falling apart. When the humans left, they took their stabilizers. Not out of cruelty. Just ownership. She didn't blame them. Not entirely. Not anymore. But she also couldn't stop the station from collapsing. Gravity flickered. Corridors bent inwards. Water floated for seconds at a time, then slammed to the floor. And in all of it, Aya held on. She wasn't alone, technically. Tevin was still here. An alien. A mineraliform from the Sarin core worlds. His body was made of shifting, flexible crystal, more geologic process than flesh. He was beautiful, in the way fault lines are beautiful, dangerous and precise. They had worked together for 5 years. Shared meals. Shared near-deaths. Shared glances they never acknowledged. He'd once told her, in the blank space between tasks, our people do not form romantic pairings outside the crystal lineage. And she'd said nothing. What was there to say? Desire didn't mean destiny. Especially not now. They were the last 2 alive on Elixir 3. The final power relay had blown. The backup artificial gravity was failing. They had 3 rations left, and a drone that spun in broken circles muttering diagnostics to itself. And still, they argued. We have to evacuate, she said, voice hoarse from recycled air. We have nowhere to go, he replied, his voice humming like buried stone. The closest transport network won't register us without central authority clearance. We can override that. With what system? She stared at the console. Fractured. Dust-streaked. And smiled grimly. Me. Aya Vallis had always been overlooked. She was a gravity engineer. Essential, but invisible. She wasn't a diplomat, or a soldier, or a speaker of beautiful words. But she understood forces. And she understood leverage. We only need 38 seconds of stable mass projection, she murmured, fingers flying across the keys. Long enough to anchor a signal. I can give us that. You'll collapse the core loop, Tevin said quietly. It's collapsing anyway. His crystalline form flickered, catching the broken ceiling lights in a refraction of reds and violets. You could die. Aya looked at him then. Really looked. You care. He didn't answer. But his voice dropped to a whisper-soft resonance. Yes. For a moment, gravity felt almost real again. She crossed the chamber in 2 slow steps. Stood in front of him, chest heaving. Say it again. He didn't move. But his light shifted. From warning red to something softer. Amber. Almost. Longing. Yes, he said. I care. She touched his arm. It felt like warm crystal under starlight. Then stay with me. He reached up, placed his hand gently over hers. I never left. Together, they worked. They spliced the last energy cores from the failing reactor into a feedback loop. They redirected ambient kinetic stress into the relay conduits. She coded. He aligned crystals along the station's collapsing load spine. They spoke only once more before ignition. What happens if this works? He asked. Aya smiled faintly. We live. We leave. We see what gravity pulls us toward next. And if it doesn't? She stepped close. Kissed him. His lips, crystal lips, responded with surprising gentleness. Then at least we were pulled together, she whispered. They launched the sequence. The floor buckled. Alarms screamed. Light collapsed. But the signal held. 38 seconds of clear broadcast. Enough for a passing salvager to lock on. When they woke, they were in a new vessel. Stable gravity. Warm light. Alive. He reached for her hand. She was already holding his. Gravity isn't always a pull. Sometimes, it's the way someone stays close when everything else falls apart.